Welcome into the Wiltfong Whiparound with Steve Wiltfong. Today is Thursday, March 6th, and I'm your host, Josh Newberg, and we are back for another loaded episode. The dead period is over, so we got action on the recruiting trail once again. Like I said, loaded show. We're talking USC, Oregon, Colorado, and Clemson today. But first, guys, do me a favor and hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. There is not a better channel on YouTube for you to get your college football recruiting news than this one. So jump on board, hit subscribe for me, please. Let's bring on On3 national analyst Steve Wiltfong. Steve, we're going to talk Oregon. The Ducks are working. They're working hard to hold on to the number one class. This weekend, though, they got a shot to kind of build on this lead. Number one quarterback Jared Curtis comes to visit. We've talked a lot about Jared Curtis on this channel. How important is this trip, not just for him, but his family as well?
Well, I think that's the key right there, right? Coming out there with this family. They've spent a lot more time in Athens. It's a lot more convenient to get to Georgia than Oregon. These are the final two. Jared's been out there a couple times with this family, but they're now coming as a whole unit. They're going to spend 3 days. They get there on the night of the 8th, but they're going to be out there the 9th, 10th, and 11th, spending time with Dan Lanning, Will Stein, and this coaching staff. And I think they're going to ask all the hard questions. What happens if Will Stein's not the offensive coordinator? So things like that. And that's because Will Stein's is one of the hot names in the country as an assistant coach right now. So Dan Lanning will be ready for all of that. They're excited to get Jared Curtis and company back out on campus. Oregon looks like the front runner going into the final two visits, but Georgia very much in this recruitment was committed to the Bulldogs. Obviously, family and Jared love that coaching staff, love the type of players that Georgia recruits. Loves Coach Mike Bobo, Coach Montgomery Van Gorder, and the potential in that offense, proximity to home. But Oregon is an exciting school right now in this recruitment. They'll be out there for 3 days. Dan Lanning, Coach Stein and company looking to close this thing out. I wouldn't be surprised if he makes his college decision coming out of these upcoming spring visits. He's going to be at Georgia on the 13th, and he's been to these schools several times. He does have official visits set with both programs for June, so maybe these visits make the decision even harder. Maybe he has to go into the summer. But right now, I think we're going into these visits with the idea that these are the last two. Then it's time to make a decision.
All right, that's going to be pretty interesting. So you do think he makes it to that Georgia? I mean, the Georgia visit is 13, so we could be looking at a decision maybe, possibly in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think so. Again, he's been to Georgia numerous times. This will be his third time out with the family at Oregon. So he'll have all the information, just one more visit to each campus just to make sure everything feels right one way or the other. Get these tough questions answered, these final thoughts on the table, then go home, talk it over with family representation, come to a decision and announce it.
All right. Well, if Oregon wants that number one class, they're going to need to land a guy like Jared Curtis because USC is nipping at the heels of the Ducks. They flipped Jonas Williams from Oregon during the dead period. Now, today, they get number 2 cornerback Devon Benjamin on campus. Is this another USC-Oregon battle for the number 2 ranked corner in America?
These are the programs I'm watching the closest. I logged that recent On3 prediction in favor of Oregon, but I think USC is right there with the Ducks, and there are some around the Trojans program that think that they lead. He is going to be at USC on Thursday. The Trojans are a well-oiled machine right now from a relationship standpoint. The NIL potential that they're showing these top targets in the 2026 class, I expect them to put it all on the table on Thursday for Devon Benjamin. We'll see where the chips stack up coming out of this visit to USC on Thursday.
All right. What other major Oregon USC battles are you tracking right now in the 2026 cycle?
Well, there's quite a few. I think you start with the number 4 linebacker in the On3 industry, Talanoa Illy. He visited both Oregon and USC earlier this calendar year. My intel gives the edge to the Trojans right now, but both programs are battling for the number 78 prospect overall. 4-star defensive lineman Tamuhini Topuai. We've obviously talked to him several times on the show out of Mater Day. He committed to Oregon during the fall, but he was at USC the first weekend of February. The Trojans are very much on flip watch in this recruitment. My colleague Chad Simmons reporting that Tom is expected to take his official visits before making a final decision. Several California names looking at both programs. It starts with the number one cornerback in the on-3 industry, five-star Brandon Arrington. He also likes Alabama, A&M, to name a few others. But Oregon, there's been more buzz about them than USC, but USC's had him on campus, and they're one of his favorites. Five-star receiver Chris Henry Jr. is committed to Ohio State. Five-star. He might be tough to flip. Been more buzz about Oregon, but USC again hosted him in February. Both programs expecting officials in the summer. The number 2 tight end in the class is Mark Bowman. He's visiting Alabama this weekend. He also likes Georgia and Texas, but Oregon and USC on the list for official visits. USC also going to get a visit this spring. The Trojans are really starting to hit the gas on Mark Bowman. Recently reclassified 2026 cornerback Havon Finney has Oregon and USC in his lead group. Oregon probably has the edge on USC right now for four-star receiver Caden Dixon-Wyatt out of Mater Dei, but USC recently offered trying to make a move. On the flip side, I think USC has the edge for four-star running back Deshaun Rideau, but Oregon is one of the other programs he's strongly considering. Four-star defensive lineman Tommy Tofi from California is an Oregon lean per the On3 RPM, and there's a few out-of-state names to also keep an eye on, Josh. Four-star edge Derek Coleman Brusa is the number one player in the state of Washington. Oregon is favored on the On3 RPM. Albert Hill is the number one player in Ohio, a cornerback. He just visited Alabama. His next two visits are Oregon and USC, so he's a pivotal recruit in these sweepstakes. The number 8 cornerback in the class, Kerry Adams, will be at Oregon on April 11th. He's trying to line something up with USC, certainly Penn State, Michigan, Notre Dame, or some of the other Syracuse in there for Kerry Adams. They're both swinging at the number 1 linebacker in the land, Tyler Atkinson, the number 3 safety, Jet Washington. So Oregon, USC, recruiting the nation's best from coast to coast, oftentimes going toe-to-toe with each other. They both are in the mix for the number 1 class in the country. It's a battle that's going to wage on in the spring. And Jared Curtis and Davon Benjamin, all eyes on those two right now in this class race for number 1 sweepstakes.
Yeah, this is great to see. I mean, 2 rival programs fighting for the number 1 recruiting class, battling over a number of top recruits. And look, some are going to end up at USC, some are going to end up at Oregon. Where the chips all fall, we'll see at the end. But Oregon fans, USC fans, talk to us. How do you feel about some of these battles? Let us know. Let's talk some Colorado Buffalo recruiting, and we got to start at the quarterback position. With Shedeur Sanders moving to the NFL, you already got Caden Salter and Julian Lewis moving into their new places in Boulder. But Coach Prime is looking to keep that quarterback room stacked. Steve, you got some intel on Colorado quarterback recruiting.
Well, I think there's 4 guys that they covet right now in the 2026 cycle. The list would start with 5-star Keyshawn Henderson. He's committed to Houston. It's going to be a tough road for any program to flip the legacy high standout from Houston, from Willie Fritz and the Cougars, because of the history that they have together and the amount of time and everything else that's been poured into keeping Keyshawn Henderson local. But Colorado, they feel like they got some inroads with the kid. They're maintaining communication with him and trying to see where that leads them down the road. Oscar Rios is an On300 quarterback from Downey, California. He has an official visit set for the weekend of June 20th. He's someone that I think Colorado's in the thick of it for, with Arizona, Oklahoma State, and Utah, to name a few others. They recently offered Peach State passer Brody McWhorter. Colorado's in his top 7 with Auburn, Indiana, Mississippi State, Syracuse, and Wisconsin. And Keyshawn's not the only player that they are in there trying to get some traction with for a flip. Arizona 4-star Tate Reynolds, he's committed to Clemson. He's expected at Clemson this weekend. Colorado's trying to get involved there as well. They got a lot to sell to these quarterbacks, Josh. Had the nation's number 6 passing offense last year, 5th in passing efficiency. Shedeur Sanders, hoping to hear his name called in the first round of the NFL draft. A lot to point to when Colorado's recruiting a quarterback right now.
All right, moving on to the running back position. Marshall Faulk. He's now on coaching staff with the Buffs, another Hall of Famer joining that coaching staff. Who should Colorado fans get excited about when it comes to running back recruiting?
Well, I think that's something that's going to be fluid as Coach Falk gets in there and starts to determine who he wants to recruit at the position. But one guy we know for sure that Colorado is high on right now is Deshaun Rideau from California, USC, Oregon, UCLA, some of the programs that have been mentioned most with Deshaun. But Colorado trying to get in. They love this young man and his 10-4 speed.
Mm. All right, let's talk about the wide receiver position because they're losing a ton of talent. I mean, starting with Travis Hunter, but there's others that are all headed to the NFL. We got a 5-star on the board, though, in Cedarian Morgan. Where does Colorado stand with him?
Yeah, if you watched Colorado play this fall, so many guys ate. Travis Hunter, LeJohntay Webster, Will Shepard, Jimmy Horn Jr., all guys that made big plays at big moments during the season. Cedarian Morgan is the number 3 receiver in the class from Alabama. He's excited to get out and meet with Coach Prime, get around the players, see the campus. He thinks it's a place that he can come in and make a difference right away in that offense. Jace Matthews is visiting in May. He feels the same way. He talked about the production of the wideouts from Travis Hunter winning the Heisman to just the ability for them to spread the ball around and have a lot of guys make plays. CJ Sadler from Detroit Cass Tech, he's already been to Colorado a couple times. There's no question. That's one of his favorite programs. Typically, when you ask him who he likes, Colorado's the first school he mentions. And one of the reasons why is because he says Coach Prime allows their players to be who they are. And when you're allowed to be comfortable in your environment and be yourself, it brings the best out of you as a player. Just loves that environment and culture around Colorado, in addition to the offense. Some other guys that they're swinging at, Jalen Lott, who's one of the fastest players in the class from the Lone Star State. And then Tyron Wortham is a player from Sarasota Booker that they covet, that they're in the mix for.
Yeah, a lot of opportunity to play early there, especially at the wide receiver position if you go to Colorado. How about the offensive line? Who are the early names to know in the trenches?
Well, I think it starts with the 2 that are from Colorado. You have Brett Collier, 4 stars playing at IMG Academy, and then Deacon Schmidt. They've been on campus a bunch, going to return for official visits. Those are the 2 guys that I would say are probably their top overall targets. A couple other guys that they love on the offensive front, Malachi Lee, the number 1 player in Hawaii, and then Johnny Jones out of the state of Florida. Jones is going to be on campus April 5th. He likes the new additions to the offensive line, his coaching staff, the NFL experience that they have as coaches and players in that building. Johnny Jones is someone I could see Colorado making a big move for.
All right. Steve, let's talk a little Colorado recruiting on the defensive side of the ball. We know Coach Prime and his staff, they're trying to get bigger, they're trying to get faster, they're trying to get more athletic on defense. Let's start in the trenches on defense. Who are some of the top targets Colorado fans need to know about?
Well, I think that the first name you look at is the number 1 defensive lineman in the country per the On3 industry, James Johnson. Georgia and Syracuse have been leading the pack, but Colorado is one of his favorites. He goes to North Fort Myers High School. That's where Coach Sanders played his high school football. A couple other guys that they like at the point of attack, Tufanua Umu Case from in-state, T.I. Sean Scott, defensive lineman from California, and Joseph Pecco. Colorado obviously just hired his dad, 15-year NFL veteran Damata Pecco, to coach the defensive line. They got a great shot to land both of his sons, but particularly Pecco, the older one in the 2026 class.
All right, we got a couple of elite linebackers on the board that Colorado's involved with here. This is exciting.
Yeah, I think that they're going to get the number 1 linebacker in the land, Tyler Atkinson, out for a look this spring. We'll see if they can surge for him like they did for one of the Peach State's best last cycle, Julian Lewis. Isaiah Williams is On3's number 1 ranked linebacker. Florida has the momentum with him right now, but Colorado's a program trying to get involved. They also like Malik Morris, a 4-star linebacker out of Lakeland High in the Sunshine State. And then Tyler Atkinson's teammate, 4-star linebacker Anthony Davis. Those guys are state champions out of powerhouse Grayson High.
All right. And then we know Coach Sanders is attracting the best when it comes to the defensive secondary. He's active in Georgia. He's active out in Colorado. What do you think about this Colorado secondary recruiting board?
Well, I think Dorian Barney is cornerback target numero uno out of Carrollton High in the Peach State. They're all in on Barney. And he talked about being coached by the best to ever play my position, and learning from him is what stands out at the position. They're trying to make a move with the number one corner in the on-3 industry, Brandon Arrington. I talked to a source that says Colorado is right in there for the number 7 cornerback in the land, Justice Fitzpatrick. They're swinging at Davon Benjamin, Caden Gebhart from Ohio. Those are a couple others that Colorado has prioritized in the secondary.
All right, Colorado fans, talk to Steve and I. You got to be fired up about this recruiting board. Who do you guys think is the most important target for the Buffs in 2026? Let us know. Comment section below. Let's talk a little Clemson recruiting as the Tigers are heating up on the trail. Currently sitting at number 28 in the country, but Dabo and his staff, they got a big visit weekend on tap. Steve, what are you hearing?
Well, it's the elite retreat weekend, Josh. You and I both know that Clemson, they only have 2 bangers all recruiting cycle. Elite retreat, and then the first official visit weekend of the summer. That's when they bring in their top targets. Oftentimes, these young men are at both. Dabo Swinney sets the tone each of those weekends with kind of a speech to all the recruits and their families about all the reasons why Clemson has been successful on the field and off the field with Paul Journey and things like that. They get these prospects and their families around the other prospects and their families. They start building that community right now. They get them around the coaching staffs and their families. And that's why they're typically so successful with their top. A lot of these guys are like-minded to the Clemson way already. They come to campus, they get acquainted with each other, and Clemson's going to hit some home runs with this visitor group this weekend. The list starts with the number 1 linebacker in the country, Tyler Atkinson. He's already been to Clemson a couple times. We've talked a lot about Georgia, Auburn, Ohio State, and some others in this recruitment, but he's talked about Clemson's culture in the past and is thankful for the opportunity to be part of their program. He has his official visit set for late May as well. A lot of dynamic wide receivers. We've seen Clemson start to get those guys back in the program. When you look at this Clemson football team coming into the season, they got some electric guys out on the perimeter. I think that's a place where, we saw them dip from national title contenders to just ACC title contenders, them building back into a national title contenders because that receiver room is starting to look like the receiver room of old under Coach Dabo Swinney and this staff. There's a lot of guys coming to campus this weekend that can keep that theme rolling. The number 2 receiver in the country per on-3, Naeem Burrows, is a visitor. Florida's trending on the on-3 RPM, but Clemson's right there. USC and Texas rounding out his top 4. Connor Salmon is one of the fastest receivers in the country out of the Bullis School. Clemson's a front runner with Notre Dame, Penn State, Maryland, and Virginia Tech. Gordon Sellers out of Charlotte, Providence Day is a top 5 of Clemson, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, and South Carolina. Ryan Mosley's one of the top 2-way players in the country, receiver, safety. Clemson's recruiting him at both right now. They're getting him on campus. Georgia's the on-3 RPM favorite. Clemson trying to change that narrative this weekend. And then Larry Fitzgerald's son, Devin Fitzgerald, will also visit this weekend. He's got a Clemson offer. Clemson's high on him. Josh, the number 1 player in state, Zion Giles, he's our number 3 defensive lineman in the country. He's visiting this weekend. I could see him in Clemson's class. South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, 4 others that they're going to have to battle to ultimately land him. Huge weekend on the offensive line. Matt Luke, one of the top offensive line coaches in the country, also one of the best recruiters, has Clemson in the mix for many of the nation's best. Adam Guthrie's already on campus. He got there a couple days ago. He's supposed to visit this weekend. He's in the area. He called up Coach Luke, and within 30 minutes, they had a big dinner planned with coaches, players on the team. Adam Guthrie's trending towards Clemson. I love my on-3 RPM for one of the Midwest's best offensive tackles. He sees Clemson's starting tackle, Blake Miller from Ohio, also thriving for this program. Darius Gray's the number 2 interior offensive lineman in the country. He's got this visit and his Clemson official set. Leo Delaney from Providence Day in Charlotte. Clemson's one of his favorites. Carter Scruggs, an on-300 offensive lineman from Virginia. He's been looking forward to this Clemson visit for a while. All these guys rave about the culture, Josh. Zayden Krempin, Desmond Green, Chancellor Barclay, Grant Wise, 4 more blue chip offensive linemen visiting this weekend for the Tigers. Just a few more names to run through. The number 4 safety in the country is Caden Hall. He's always spoke highly about Clemson. They're going to have a great chance to land the number 6 safety in the on-3, Contavian Anderson, as they battle Michigan, South Carolina, Kentucky, and Indiana. The number 7 edge rusher, number 57 player overall, Bryce Perry Wright from Buford, is one of the top players on campus. He also likes Auburn, Georgia, Texas, and Texas A&M. Samari Matthews is an elite Tracy corner from in-state. Clemson, Florida State, Texas, South Carolina are the competition there. Cam Brooks is a 4-star edge from Thomas County Central that's excited to get there. Blake Stewart, 4-star safety from Woodward Academy. Clemson's one of the front runners. There's several more names. You'll have to be on 3 all weekend for coverage from the Clemson Elite Retreat. But this is going to set Clemson up for another top 25 class. Will they be top 10? We'll see coming out of this weekend. And that will do it for today's episode of the Wiltfong Whiparound. Thanks for tuning in. Please hit like and subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel so you're up to date on the latest and best recruiting information from the web, the Inside Scoop with Josh Newberg, the Wiltfong Whiparound. We will be back on Monday to recap a big weekend from the trail.